Hi everyone, this is Jennifer. We're going to discuss about clauses and how to classify them for the purpose of SFL analysis in this video. To understand more about a clause, let us first take a look at this example. What do you think it is? Is it a clause? A sentence? Well, if you say it's a clause, then you're right. And if you say it's a sentence, you're also right. I love coffee is both a clause and a sentence. How so? Let's see some other examples. I love coffee very much. I love coffee despite my doctor's warning. I love coffee in the morning. Now, these three are also considered both a clause and a sentence. Even though we have additional information in the form of a noun clause like my doctor's warning or adverbs like very much and only in the morning, they still consist of one subject and one verb each. Now, let's see that last one here with an asterisk in front of it. What about this one? Is it a clause? Is it a sentence? Or both? Or neither? The last one here is neither a sentence or a clause. This one is called a fragment, an unfinished clause or sentence. Why? Because the idea is not communicated completely. I love. I love what? Who? A sentence which has an unfinished idea can't be considered a sentence, or a clause for that matter, because it is incomplete, a fragment of what it's supposed to be. Remember that in English language, a verb can be a transitive or intransitive verb, right? A transitive verb has to have an object attached to it, like this one. I love what? I love who? While intransitive verbs, they don't need any objects. For example, if I say I sleep, that is a complete idea already. You don't go around asking people they sleep what? They sleep who? Instead, you may want to ask them additional information like when or where do you sleep, right? So the word sleep is a complete sentence when it is combined with a verb. But some verbs, like this one, I love, is not complete without an object. But of course, that's another day and another topic to discuss in your grammar classes, perhaps. Um, so this time, let's stick to our discussion, okay? Now let's move on to some more examples. This one and these ones. So if a sentence or a clause usually needs at least one subject and one verb, like what we talked about earlier in the previous slide, what about these ones? Are they considered clauses or sentences? The answer is yes. How? You might ask. It is only one word or two. Well, simple. They convey a complete idea. So aside from having one subject and verb, another feature of a clause is that they must convey a complete idea. Of course, you understand the word hello or the phrase good morning without questioning people what they mean, right? So the communication purpose is very clear here. And therefore, hello, good morning, and the last one is considered a clause each. And the same goes with these answers yes and no. When I ask you if you like coffee or if you like chocolate, and you say yes or no without further information, without further explaining what you meant, they are still a complete idea. Do you like chocolate? Yes, I understand that. We understand what it means. If you say yes, then it means yes, you like chocolate. If you say no, then it's no, you don't like chocolate. Simple as that. These clauses without subjects or predicates or verbs are called minor sentences, or in SFL terms, minor clauses. So, how is a sentence different from a clause? Let us see the definition first. A sentence here is a term we use when we deal with written language. It can be made up of more than one clause. So, if you say one sentence, there may be more than one clause in it. But people don't usually speak in sentences. They speak in clauses, like what I am doing now. A clause applies to both spoken and written communication, so it is a more general term than a sentence. A clause needs to show a complete idea, and therefore it is said to convey messages. And yes, a clause is also the largest grammatical unit. Huh? Wait, you may ask. What about sentences? They're larger than clauses, right? Well, like I said before, a sentence can be made up of more than one clause. It means, actually, that a sentence is either a clause or just a combination of clauses. Confused yet? Okay, let's see another example. So let's compare these two sentences. The first one is very simple and straightforward, right? Subject, verb, object. Just like our examples at the beginning of the video. This one is called a simple sentence. A simple sentence is a sentence consisting of one clause, or in SFL, we call it a clause simplex. The second sentence is longer, and if you notice, it actually conveys two different ideas. First, that Sarah loves James, and second, he, James, is so sweet. So there are two clauses here combined together by the subordinating conjunction because, making it a complex sentence in grammatical word. Okay, so if you remember your writing clauses, you have three types of sentences. Simple sentence, one clause. Compound sentence, one sentence consisting of more than one clause using coordinating conjunction. And complex sentence, one sentence um, consisting of more than one clause using combined using subordinating conjunction. Now, here in SFL, the analysis will be in the level of clauses. and therefore we need to separate the sentence into two. And to be able to do that, of course, we need to know exactly what a clause is. We need to see for ourselves what is considered as a clause. And a clause has a structure, and this is the structure of clause. It has it is divided into two, the minor one and the major one. We will first discuss about minor clauses because this is simpler. Basically, minor clauses are clauses without predicate or subject, but they still convey a full idea, like hello, good evening, oh. So they are complete ideas. And most minor clauses are not really analyzed in SFL. So for now, let's just put them aside a little bit and let's discuss the one that we are going to use for our analysis throughout the semester, the major clauses. So major clauses, a major clause actually can be independent or dependent. And in this part, we are going to talk first about the independent one, which is divided into two types, the full clause and the ellipse. And we have this clause again. I love coffee. Very simple, very complete. One subject and one predicate. This one is called the full clause. Now let's see the next one. Do you like coffee? Now, even though this one is in the form of um, interrogative, a question, this is still a full clause. Like it has the subject, it has the predicate do and like, and yeah, it has an object here. So it is a full clause. And the answer is yes. Now that one word yes is called an ellipse independent clause. Why? Because even though it is only one word, it conveys the full message. We discussed this before, right? Earlier in the video. Do you like coffee? Yes. Now the word yes convey the whole meaning of yes, I like coffee. It's not that difficult, right? Okay, we will see more examples later in class, of course. So this is just a brief explanation on it. And now we will move on to major clauses, the dependent clauses. So independent clause can stand on its own. It is a full message. So when you put a period after it, it will be complete. Dependent clauses, they cannot stand on its own. They need to be attached to an independent clause to be meaningful. Otherwise, they will end up as a fragment. There are two types of dependent clauses: the finite and the non-finite and the non-embedded one. First, here we will talk about finite and non-finite. If you still remember your grammar class, I really, really hope you still do. Finite verbs refer to those verbs that can change based on several factors. For example, in the present tense of English language, a singular subject like a dog eats or I love coffee will get a singular verb. A dog eats. So the verb is attached with um, the present tense marker us for a singular subject. But when the subject become plural, dogs, the verb also change. Dogs eat. I love coffee. She loves coffee. Okay, so finite verbs usually change according to number and person, and in English, based on tenses. Okay, so the verb eats in simple present will change into ate in past tense, and so on and so forth. So usually we don't have any problems with the finite one, right? The next one, the non-finite, on the other hand, they remain stagnant. They're not really affected by the number of people, um, the type of pronouns. They don't even um, they're not even affected by tenses. They just stay the same. Like the words go, to sleep, waiting, fix, cut here, as you can see in the example. So no matter how I change the tense of the sentence from, let's say, from simple past to simple present in the first clause, she let him go is a past tense. So if I change it into she lets him go, the word go won't change into goes, but the word let will. That is because the word let is a finite verb and go is a non-finite. Or to make it simpler, go, the word go, is dependent not on the subject, not on the finite subject, but on another verb, let. So usually these non-finite verbs are not attached to the subject, but they are attached to the verb before it that come that comes before it. Now what does this have anything to do with SFL analysis? Miss, you're talking about finite, non-finite. This is very, very grammatical. This is very structural. What does it have anything to do with SFL analysis? Well, this is really important because if you don't know which part of the sentence, which part of the clause you need to separate into two, you will have problems. Okay, so how does this connect to SFL? Well, usually you have to remember, usually, not always, usually the non-finites are not considered as a separate clause from the main verb. It means they will still consider a single clause, not two. So she let him go is one clause, not two. But if I say she let him go and he didn't want to, it becomes two clauses. She let him go as one clause. He didn't want to as the second clause. Okay, but the word go is still attached to the word let here as one single clause. Okay, yeah, we will talk about this more in detail in class. So yeah, hopefully you can come to our meeting next week or yeah, whenever we have the meeting. And now we will talk the last type of dependent clause, the embedded one. What is embedding anyway? Anybody knows? I assure you it has nothing to do with any types of beds or amber or whatever it is you think about embedding. Okay? Okay, let's see. I'll try to explain what embedding means using an example. So, I have a brother who lives in Tokyo. And I also have another brother, and this one he lives in New York. Uh, but lo and behold, I have yet another brother, and he lives in Melbourne. But that's not all. I still have one more, the youngest, who lives in London. Now, when you see these sentences, when it is written down, or yeah, if you're listening to me, and I ask you how many brothers I have, you may answer four. Now, with that knowledge, let's see our next slide. So here I have four brothers, right? And since I have four brothers, when I say I have a favorite, you may be asking, which one is your favorite? So here, I'll give you some information about it. My brother, who lives in New York, is my favorite. So in this sentence, we have two clauses. The main one, my brother is my favorite, earlier, and the clause with the extra information, who lives in New York. This extra information here is called an embedded clause, a clause having important value to the main clause. In here, the information who lives in New York can't be omitted without making the message obscure. Like, you cannot say a singular, my brother is my favorite, when people know you have more than one brother. They will ask, right? They will ask, which one? All of them? If all of them, then why do you use a singular, my brother is, instead of my brothers are? So really, here, the extra information is very necessary. It is important to the message because it defines which brother you're talking about. In SFL analysis, this type of embedded clause is not separated from the main clause. So, it is still considered to belong to the same clause as the main one, my brother is my favorite, because it will give clarity to the message. So, to make it simple, restrictive or embedded clause is not considered as a different clause from the main one. They are still considered as one clause. Okay, now let's see the difference here. Let's say I have one brother and two sisters. Do you think it's still necessary for me to add the clause who lives in New York when you know that I only have one brother? No, right? Because I only have one brother. So it is not necessary. It doesn't really matter where he lives. I have one brother and he is my favorite among my siblings. What what had become an important message in the previous example when I had four brothers is now only serve as an additional information, which won't change anything if I decided not to share it. The information about me loving my brother is still valid, is still very clear without that information of where he lives. Now, this type of extra information is called the non-embedded clause. It can be separated from the main text, and in SFL, actually, it is. It needs to be separated, actually, and it needs to be analyzed on its own right. But really, how do you differentiate between an embedded and non-embedded clause in a sentence? Okay, so usually if it is non-embedded, the extra information is separated by commas, like this one over here. So when it is written, it is easier for you to know which one is embedded, which one is not. If it is not embedded, usually we will write it using a comma as to separate both of them. Okay, so the embedded one doesn't have any commas between the main clause because the import sorry because the message is important to share. So yeah, anyway, that is that. Hopefully by now you're quite familiar with what is considered as clauses um, in the perspective of SFL, and we're going to talk and discuss about it further in class. And here are some references I use in the making of this video. So yeah, I believe that you're new to SFL, some of you. And if you want to know more about SFL, and if you're very new, you may want to check out the one written by Jarrett and Wicknell because it really makes everything easier to understand. And then you may want to go further to Aggins and Halliday for a more detailed understanding on SFL. And that is all for today. Thank you for watching and see you on my next video. Bye bye.